Hello, dear listener, and welcome to another episode of the Gaming Aroma podcast. I am back in your ear holes after a week break. Sorry to the faithful listener that I didn't put out an episode last week. I had quite a busy weekend. I was doing some stuff for Gears Intel. We put out a huge gaming retrospective on Gears Tactics, which is out now, so go and check that out. But also, last Sunday was off the back of a really shitty week in gaming with all the Xbox studio closures and, which is just on top of bad news after bad news in gaming. To be honest, I just didn't feel like talking about it. I didn't feel like doing an episode because it was like I was either going to do an episode and completely ignore it, or do an episode and just kind of say everything that everyone's already saying, which I just thought was pointless. So I took a week off. But I am back. I'm back this week, and I think this is going to be a mostly positive episode. I will give a brief couple of thoughts on some of the crappy news we had, but not necessarily repeating everything that everyone said. Here we are. We are a couple of weeks out. I'm going to talk about video games, but first, I hope you're all okay. How are you? I am recording this on Saturday, the 18th, because tomorrow I'm going out with the family to Bristol, my old second home, Bristol, to see some friends for those friends' kids' birthday party. A lot of kids' birthday parties these days. I'm at that age where, yes, most of my friends have kids, and so we all had kids sort of in the same few years, which means they're all young, which we're always attending the parties, and yeah, it's fabulous. Please excuse my raspy voice. I have a terrible cough as well, which I'm kind of coming out the other side of now. My son's had a really bad cough for a month, and then it's been just kind of, I was going to say transplanted, that's wrong. It's been passed on to my wife and I. Jess and I have both got coughs as well. Regular listeners to my shows will know that I'm ill once a month. This, again, speaking of kids, this is what happens. When you have a kid, you do get ill like every 4 to 6 weeks because they pick up bugs at school and stuff. And yeah, it really can wipe you out. Super spreaders, those little uns. But yes, hope everyone is okay. I'm doing okay despite the cough. I will do my best not to cough into your ears today. I mentioned that Gears Intel episode, the Gears Tactics retrospective. If I do have any Gears of War fans listening, please do go and check it out. Me and the guys put a lot of effort into analysing and kind of, deep diving into that game. It's a long old game to play. And then I put quite a bit of effort into the YouTube version with some editing, with some video clips and stuff. And yeah, we're all just really proud of that episode. So I'd love for you to go check it out. Even if you have a slight interest in Gears of War, maybe this will break the seal for you. So yeah, go and check it out at Gears Intel, Gears_Intel on Twitter. And I think it's just at Gears Intel on YouTube. If you type it in YouTube, it'll come up. So video games. Yes, I've got some really cool stuff to talk about today in terms of what I've been playing and things like that. But first, off the back of the Xbox news, we've got the Xbox showcase coming around the corner, which I was supposed to be really excited for, and all that bad Xbox news definitely did kind of kill my buzz a little bit for it. And as I said, everything that I think can kind of be say about it for the most part has already been said by everybody, so I'm not going to repeat it. It's, the sentiment should go without saying that it is terrible when people lose their jobs and studios get closed. This was a very, I can't even fathom the running of a company that size and how it works. But I do, I do sympathise with the people who lost their jobs. And the worst thing, let's say the worst thing about it, but one of the things that really frustrated me when it all went down is there was a lot of people online very quick to just kind of point fingers and have a go at this, that and the other and say, that this is all so and so's fault. This is, all the because of the acquisition and stuff like that, stuff like this, rather than kind of giving some time to the devs that lost their jobs. Yeah, it's very easy to get caught up in that stuff. And something else I really didn't like is people have been going, well, who's next on the chopping block? I'd be really worried if I was at this studio and this studio, which I just think is so insensitive. There's people... It's fine. If you want to speculate and stuff, knock yourself out. Like, of course, I have thoughts. I'm not going to say them out loud on a public forum. These people read this stuff, I mean, if they're sensible, they'll stay off Twitter, like the devs at these other studios, but... I don't think they want to log on to Twitter and see everybody speculating about them losing their jobs. So yeah, that shit really annoyed me. So just fucking cut that out if you're wondering who's next for the chopping block. It's just... Anyway. So lots of stuff has been said, but obviously sympathies with the devs. Not everybody lost their jobs. Some of them got moved around and stuff, which is, better than losing your job, obviously. But I think... the main thing that shocked everyone was kind of the closure of Tango Gameworks, and that shocked me as well. And, for obvious reasons, like everyone said, I'm not going to repeat it. Hi-Fi Rush was supposed to have done well, and Xbox was supposed to be investing in these studios, and blah, 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 blah. I don't want to dwell on all that, but I did just want to talk about Hi-Fi Rush specifically, and some points that I was kind of thinking about that I kind of couldn't get out of my head. And it's sort of links to one of the first things I said. I remember I posted on the First Aid Spray Discord that I was just kind of shocked that you wouldn't nurture this talent instead, because, as you know, this is supposed to be the road to producing good stuff. It takes time. And there's all these issues about, Microsoft model and is it working and all that. I don't really want to talk about that. But like what I couldn't shake about Hi-Fi Rush was that idea that this game that was kind of universally praised for being innovative and creative and enjoyed by many, despite the fact it didn't sell, there's no way around that. The game was a commercial bomb, but under this circumstance on Game Pass, I think it was kind of sold as something. When I say sold, I mean that kind of metaphorically. The way it was, the messaging behind it was that it was this cool new little game. The fact is, it wasn't a little game. It was a big game that took 5 years to make, with a huge team working on it. So it wasn't a small little indie game. So Hi-Fi Rush doesn't fall under the category of maybe something like Tales of Kenzara, which I've talked about in previous episodes, which is absolutely an indie game. Hi-Fi Rush was not a small game, it was a big game, but it was so creative and so well received that the thing I couldn't shake was, why would you not nurture and invest in that creativity? And video games are funny because, that was the first one for Hi-Fi Rush. And it's come out at a weird time in the gaming industry. It's difficult for new IPs, I suppose, but I think historically, what often happens with video games is as they iterate, they actually get better. And this is something and this is not always true. It's just often true. And it's very different to something like films and TV series. It feels like movies get worse the more they're iterated on. It's rare that like the sequels are better than the first movie, and of course that does happen. Terminator 2, prime example. But with movies, it's kind of it seems like it's commonly agreed that the originals, the first movies are always better, and the sequels make them worse and worse. With games, it's different because generally what happens is the technology, like with movies, technology changes, but it's in such a small way. Movies have kind of been made the same way for 100 years, excusing CG, but you can make a movie today the same way it was made, 50 years ago or whatever. Whereas today with video games, and because they're this medium where art and technology really, really is intertwined, the ability to execute your ideas can potentially become easier with better technology as it advances. And that's a huge part of video games iterating and becoming better, bigger and better, more enemies on screen, more weapons, more systems, more mechanics. It doesn't mean that a really stripped back game with minimal stuff and the first games are rubbish. No, it doesn't. It just means that you can sometimes do a bit more. And so Hi-Fi Rush was this game that's launched. It's the first one in the series. And to end something that was so well, it's so rare that a new IP at launch would be so well received, and to just kind of end it is after one game and not giving it a chance. To me, it's just madness. As I said, they should be nurturing this creativity, and maybe Hi-Fi Rush was more expensive than we realize, and anything that came in a Hi-Fi Rush sequel would have just been completely different to the first game if they were going to nurture the creativity but with less budget. So it was just kind of wild to me that you were onto something. You were onto your, this big franchise that had appeal in Japan as well, which is something that Xbox have been trying to do for ages. Yeah, I'm not going to go on about it because, again, people have sort of touched on that, but I couldn't shake the notion that they wouldn't. I'm not expecting them to nurture everybody and every studio, but okay, look at Redfall and Arcane. People are like, yeah, it's horrible, but I'd say nobody liked Redfall. That's not true. Lots of people did like Redfall, but it was a commercial and critical failure. No one was running around saying this is Microsoft's best new launch in a decade, which is what they kind of were saying about Hi-Fi Rush. So it's like, oh yeah, the Redfall and Arcane Austin one surprises me less. But you'd think even if you were hemorrhaging some money through Tango, you'd be like, but we're on to something here. Let's find a way to make this work. And Microsoft can make it work. They can afford to have their cake and eat it. I think what the understanding from my point of view is that, I say from my understanding, and this is completely speculation, I don't know anything, I think a lot of stuff was changing already. I've talked about it on this show, the way the industry's going. I think some huge spanners got thrown in the works when the Fallout TV show came out. And it pains me to say that because obviously I love that TV show and I love Fallout. That statement that came out from, it wasn't a statement, an internal message from Matt Booty saying we're reprioritizing for our big franchises or something and moving those other people to ZeniMax Online who work on Fallout 76. It's clear to me the success of the Fallout TV show coming at the end of the financial year has made them massively, rush around and drastically reallocate resources. And yeah, it's so they can produce more Fallout content quickly. I think that is a big part of it. I really, really do. It's not how I want more Fallout content because Microsoft can actually afford to nurture a studio like Tango and still invest further into Fallout. They can afford it. I get it. It's a business. It's all about, the bottom line and stuff. There's better ways to do it. When I worked at the animation studio years ago, I remember there was a period of time where we went maybe like nearly 2 years without a decent client project. We had little small bits of VFX and stuff that we did here and there, but nothing that really benefited the studio in any big way. No big TV advert or big campaign or anything. So we were hemorrhaging money and but we were all kept on. Nobody was fired. And we were a small studio. There was only like 9 of us. 9 of us to begin with. There ended up being like 30 employees there, which was kind of mad. But the bosses would explain, and this is one thing that, I've got to give them credit for. I had a bit of a rough time at that studio, but I've got to give them credit for. They understood that it was worse for the long term to just fire everyone when you weren't busy and making loads of money. And instead, what you do, work on internal projects, do some tests, learn some new software, practice a new technique, make a short film, make a do some artwork, do some illustrations, anything that keeps the creative juices flowing that might produce that thing that takes off and does really well. And the same could apply for a video game studio. And it's just really disheartening to know that Microsoft weren't willing to invest. Now, does it mean that Hi-Fi Rush is dead and gone forever? No, I don't think so. I presume just because the studio is closed, that doesn't mean they delete the franchise. They own it, so they can do whatever they want with it. There's no reason that Hi-Fi Rush can't be handed off to somebody else in future and we'll see it again. I hope we do, because yeah, that was a clear case of let's nurture this franchise because so many people loved it. The reason people didn't buy it is because it shadow dropped on Game Pass and it was not a big new IP that everyone recognizes. This is not rocket science, but yeah, so it may not be dead. We may get it at some point in the future. But yeah, that really stung. And I'm not going to go on too much really about how, I don't think that there's loads of evil people working at Xbox and Microsoft. I think business is fluid. It changes. Obviously, ever since the acquisition, the shareholders are probably more interested in what Xbox are doing. And there's potentially this rumored civil war at Xbox, which we've heard of for ages, between Xbox and Microsoft. We've got the Xbox CEOs that want to go one direction and the Microsoft CEOs that want to go another direction. There's been rumblings about this for ages. We're over a week out from some of the announcements of the studios being closed, and there's been no statement from Phil Spencer or anything like that, which is frustrating. But it tells me maybe, it makes me think there was a lot of pressure from Microsoft on Xbox to make more Fallout and make some cuts in an industry where everyone's making cuts. Yeah, this is the thing. We can't pretend Microsoft are the only ones doing this. Sony closed like 3 studios last year as well. Or 1 this year and 2 last year. 3 in the last year, I think it was. So everyone's doing it. Nintendo are an anomaly. I'll save a discussion for them for another day. Just really kind of disheartened about Hi-Fi Rush. It's a funny old business. I like to kind of talk business on this podcast. I'm not going to get into the weeds of the business side. It's just want to talk about my frustration at the lack of nurturing for the creativity. It's weird because on the flip side, I did see a lot of people talking about how, we've got Capcom, who are this huge success story, and it's like, look, Capcom can make it work. And yes, Capcom are massively successful and doing very well, giving everybody pay rises. Fantastic. The caveat here is Capcom don't make anything new. And this is not a slight against them. I fucking love Capcom. I love Resident Evil. But they don't make anything new. They stick to Resident Evil, Street Fighter, Dragon's Dogma obviously just came out, which, let's be honest, there's some of the tail end of that. There's been some issues. What's the other one? Monster Hunter. Yeah? They made one new IP that I can think of that was a big deal, or supposed to be a big deal, and that was Exoprimal, and that was... Even they knew it was going to be a bomb. They sold it to Game Pass. And it's a bomb. No one's playing that game. Who's playing Exoprimal right now? Let's look at the Steam charts, shall we? Exoprimal, Steam charts. 130 people in the last 24 hours. Nobody. Yes, that doesn't account for console, but yeah, it's a dead game. So yes, Capcom are massively successful, but they're playing it very safe, and fair play to them. They're doing great stuff with Resident Evil. They're doing remakes, which could be considered even more safe and less creative. But I love the remakes. There's people out there that are anti-remakes and think that they're nothing but a product, and it's just like, yes, all video games are a product, but Capcom are playing it very, very safe. And that's probably why they're being so successful. I mean, okay, I need to be fair. There's obviously some very talented people working there, and I've got a lot of time for Capcom. I've said before how the RE engine is amazing and I love it. But, you know, if they were just spending time making new IP and not farming out Resident Evil and Monster Hunter and a new Dragon's Dogma, maybe they wouldn't be giving everybody pay rises, you know? So, yes, it's a funny old industry. It's a funny old industry. Anyway, let's talk about some other news. What else? Since the last episode, the Switch 2 has been confirmed that it's on the way. Just very quickly on this. Nintendo announced in a tweet, no less, that the Switch, the next iteration or the next version of the Switch will be announced this fiscal year, which is like the end of March 2025. They said there's a direct coming up soon, but we're not talking about it there, so don't get excited about it. Nintendo also projected to sell 15 million Switches this year, which tells me the Switch 2 is launching before the end of the fiscal year. Because to think that they would be selling another 15 million Switches before then, when they're already down on hardware, right? Everybody's down on hardware. Yeah, that would be wild. But yeah, the Switch 2, it's exciting. It's exciting. I just wish it was sooner than March 2025. I was just playing the Switch today, actually. Playing Nintendo Switch Sports with my son. But I thought that was cool. They put everyone out their misery and had the audacity to make a industry-shattering announcement by saying the Switch 2 is coming. Yeah, fair play to them on Nintendo. I definitely want to have like a long chat about Nintendo with like a Nintendo fan. I was going to say fanboy. Somebody who's like really, really into Nintendo, like in like the business side as well. I would love to talk to them on this podcast. Sony has 2 new CEOs. They obviously had their financial earnings call where, as expected, they've not sold as many PS5s as they're going to. Hardware's down, and which is everybody knew was going to be the case. They've reassigned their new CEOs. But one interesting thing to come out of this was they said they've got this weird. They've said they've got this thing, this business strategy corporate event coming up, and I took notice of it because they subtitled it with Beyond the Boundaries. And what does that mean? Beyond the boundaries of what? Beyond the boundaries of exclusivity, beyond the boundaries of platforms. Here we go. See, I mean, as I always say, as I've been saying, it feels like every week there's something that comes out in gaming news that points us, that shines the light on the new direction and stuff that we're going in. What the fuck am I talking about? I am rambling. I was just going through some of these headlines. I'm going to get to some other stuff in a bit. What else? Call of Duty on Game Pass. That was another big thing this week. It's funny because in the same like 4 days, we had it rumored that there was internal discussions about whether to put Call of Duty on Game Pass or whether to sell it. Microsoft doesn't know what to do and stuff. And then it was confirmed, or not confirmed, or reported by the Wall Street Journal, saying that no, Microsoft has said they plan to put it on Game Pass and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, I believe it when I see it. I fully expect it to be on Game Pass. I am not a Call of Duty player. I have a fondness for some of the older Call of Duties, back in the heyday. I say heyday like it's not one of the biggest games on the planet today. But Call of Duty is apparently coming to Game Pass. I just want to also caveat myself here, or disclaimer myself. Like, some of this stuff that I'm discussing could possibly be considered leaks. I think I mentioned before, like, I have no problem with corporate leaks and strategy leaks and stuff like that. My issues with leaks are game details and development leaks and, studio leaks and stuff. So, but Microsoft strategy leaks, have at it. I'm sure they'd want to do a big reveal about it coming on Game Pass, but this is not like, like like I said, about, you know, people putting their time and effort into marketing campaigns, and to think about the effect it would have on it if you leaked them. I think Call of Duty is evergreen. It's a constant thing. No one is, I think, no one is going to be surprised. I don't know how much marketing is going into the Call of Duty on Game Pass reveal. I mean, it'll probably just be mentioned at the showcase, and that's it. I could be wrong. Maybe they've spent $100 million and employed 1,000 people just to market the new Call of Duty, and now it's been spoiled. In which case, I'm wrong. I doubt it, though. Yeah, so I'm not surprised. There was also talk that the cost of Game Pass is probably going up. And I tweeted about this, or I replied to a journalist I follow. And the journalist, who was it? It was Paul Tassi, and he was saying about how, well, there you go, enjoy your price hike when Call of Duty comes to Game Pass. And it's like, yeah, I mean, everybody's raising prices. I don't want the price to be raised. The thing about Game Pass, and I'm just going to paraphrase what I replied to in my tweet to him. The thing about Game Pass is, ever since it launched, I felt like I've been getting away with murder. It's astonishingly cheap and good value for someone like me that plays everything. If you only play the tentpole titles, I'd think Game Pass is a terrible deal. If you're just someone who just plays Call of Duty, why would you subscribe to Game Pass? No, it's not a good deal. Just buy the game, because then it's like just buying the game is half the price. And some people do this. Some people just buy a 2K game, you know, NBA 2K or Madden or FIFA, and they just play that all year. I know these people. I used to be one of these people, in the fact that all I used to play was Gears of War. I don't know if I've mentioned on this show, or maybe on one of my other shows, that there was a period in maybe like 2000 and... So it was like when Gears of War 3 came out, right up to the launch of Gears of War 4, basically all I played was Gears of War 3, Gears of War Judgment, Gears of War Ultimate Edition, and then Gears of War 4. And that's from 2011 to 2016. Now, I definitely played some other games in there. I dabbled here and there. I think I probably played Modern Warfare 3. And what else came out in that time? Maybe Duke Nukem Forever. But it was like I picked up one or two games here and there. All I played for a 4-year period was Gears of War. And that's not an exaggeration. Like, I could go back and maybe check my games list, and I would have fired up some games. I think maybe Grand Theft Auto 5 came out as well. South Park: The Stick of Truth came out before Gears of War 4 as well. So there was a few in there. It was littered with a few, but I think I can count them on two hands how many games I played in that, 2011, 5-year period. And this is, you know, from the end of the Xbox 360 generation to the early years of the Xbox One. So my point being, there are 1 game, 2 game a year gamers out there, but who would not benefit from Game Pass, I don't think. I mean, it's an enticing deal, and I say, yeah, go and try it, especially while it's still cheap. But if Microsoft are going to chuck Call of Duty on Game Pass, and that means it's going to go up £2 a month, to me, I'm not trying to defend a price hike. I know what that sounds like. But as I said, I've been getting away with murder. I have saved so much money on games since Game Pass really took off in 2016. It's unbelievable. I might go through and work it out one day. But what's funny is, not only have I saved money on games by not buying them because I'm playing them on Game Pass, I have actually probably spent... I don't know if I've spent more on games as a whole. Yeah, I think I have. I think through playing more games on Game Pass, it just kind of it increased my love for the hobby more than ever before, because I was sampling new stuff that I'd never tried. I was just buying more games, and Game Pass gives you discount on games. Stuff rotates out of Game Pass, and then you can buy it at a discount. So I say, oh, have I saved money? I might have ended up paying more, ironically. I tell you what I have done. I've played more games. So yeah, I'd love to. I'm going to sit down and work that out, because you can see. I can go through my Xbox and I can see every game I've ever played, and I know which ones I've bought and which ones I've played on Game Pass. I could add up savings. Yeah, I'm going to do that. That's a little project. Stand by. But for me, like, I felt like I'm getting away with murder. It's incredible value, because not only do I use Game Pass, my son uses it as well. He gets to play all those kids games that are on there. He fucking loves Goat Simulator. Like, it's just, yeah, games that I think when I was growing up, I was lucky to have 1 or 2 games. He's spoiled. He gets everything because of Game Pass. And he's not sat playing games all the time. Before all of you screaming bad parenting out there, I try to be mindful of the spoiling. So Game Pass is an incredible deal for someone like me, and I basically replied to Paul Tassi saying, it's about use cases, like and it's so funny to me that someone in his position would be kind of take that approach, because he obviously recognizes the value in Game Pass, and like similar to me, he plays basically everything, or as much as everything as he can, because he's a video games journalist. So something like Game Pass is amazing value for him. But there's use cases, and that's why there's tiers on Game Pass. There's Game Pass Ultimate, there's Game Pass Core, Game Pass whatever, Basic, I don't know what it's called, where there's a smaller selection of games. And there's a rumor that there's maybe a tier with ads coming in, which every fucker is doing with their streaming services. So it's hard for me to argue against a price increase, because especially while the industry's crumbling, it's like, if my couple of extra quid a month, my extra £24 a year goes back into the investment of the industry, great. Hopefully Microsoft don't keep slashing the studios, because it's going to make me want to invest in them less, but I guess we shall see. I mean, all analysts and rumors online kind of point to the fact that the studio closures and the firings are not over at Microsoft and at Sony, across the industry. So cost of Game Pass going up, I'm not too bothered. Like, I know that how that might make me sound, but it's like on my Fallout podcast, I talked about Fallout First, which is the subscription for Fallout 76, and everyone's like, wow, this is extortionate. Not if you play Fallout 76 every day, it isn't. Like some people do. I know these people. I know them personally. If there is a game that you play every single day, you might benefit from buying the premium pass or whatever it is. You might get more out of it. So yeah, knock yourself out. I take advantage of Game Pass in every way I possibly can. I try new things. I take advantage of the discounts it gives me. My son plays it. Yeah, it's incredible. It continues to be incredible value for money. And I don't think Game Pass is what's killing the industry. Again, maybe a conversation for another day. This is a global economy crisis we're in. So it's not Game Pass's fault that Tango Gameworks got shut down. So there's a few people out there saying that, and it's like, come on now. Sony are doing the same. They don't have a Game Pass. Okay. The reason it's easy to be angry at Microsoft is they could probably afford to keep Tango open. They just choose not to. It's a choice. Yeah. Everything's a choice. I said this was going to be a positive episode. So far, I'm not so sure that's been the case. Anyway, yes, let's talk about some stuff I've been playing and what I've been doing gaming-wise. So I think this is the positive stuff. Before I get to actual gameplay, those of you who follow me on Twitter will have seen that I am now officially all elite. I picked up an Xbox 360 Elite off Facebook Marketplace because this year, so it's July the 20th, sometime in July, the Xbox 360 digital store is closing down, which means you will no longer be able to make purchases on the store. Rumour has it, or so they say, you will still be able to download your purchase games and re-download onto the console. which is good. For how long though? Who knows? I mean, in a couple of years, I imagine they'll switch it off altogether. So that's a time will tell sort of thing. But yeah, I didn't have a 360. I had really no need for one. Didn't really have any 360 games lying around, and there's loads of stuff on backwards compatible, format that I get on the Series X. So, but once I heard the store was shutting down, and they announced this like last year, so I've kind of had it on my radar for ages. But now we're getting close to July. Yeah, I found a steal of a deal on Facebook Marketplace. I got an Xbox 360 Elite and 3 classic games, let me tell you. Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, Call of Duty Ghosts, and Battlefield 4. Oh. I sent a picture to my buddies David and Alex from Gears Intel, and Alex made the great point that it's not even the good ones from those franchises. So I won't be playing them, but they came with the console. I got the 360. She's a beauty. Brought it home, set it up, and began to download, find games on the digital store that I didn't have and download them. And there are a bunch of digital versions of 360 games that are no longer going to be available. Loads of them have been discounted as well, which is quite cool. Some of them are free, so I've been getting the free stuff, that's for sure. But then also now I have the 360, I can pick up some games, some physical versions of games that aren't in the backwards compatibility program. And there's a few that I absolutely love that aren't in there. So yeah, really happy with the 360. Obviously a lot of nostalgia for that console. And it works fine, which is always a bit of a risk buying a 360 Elite, because that's an old one, right? It's not even the 360S or the 360E. Has anyone ever seen the 360E? This is a model they launched just before the Xbox One came out, and it basically looks exactly like an Xbox One. I wonder, it might have actually launched like when the Xbox One came out or the year after, as like a thing to just tie it all together. It's like a small curved edge version of the Xbox One. It looks pretty good. Like, I think if I'm going to pick up another 360 that maybe I could rely on for a bit more of a lifespan, that's the one I'd get. But yeah, so I got the classic Elite. Came with 2 64 megabyte memory cards. Whew. A lot of storage on those babies. But it did have a 120 gig internal hard drive as well, which is quite handy. Yeah, so loving having the 360. And then this week I've started to acquire some of the physical games, and straight away I have picked up Project Gotham Racing 3 and 4. Now these Project Gotham racing games are some of my favorites ever. More specifically Project Gotham 1 and 2, the originals on the OG Xbox. That they were games that I was playing into the early hours of the night, early hours of the morning. 3 and 4 I do really like. I played them a lot less, but they've always been games that I've been waiting to come to the backwards compatibility program, and they never did. And from what I understand, there's licensing issues. Did the people who make Forza make Project Gotham? Am I imagining that? And it's like, oh, they've moved on. So Bizarre Creations. This is Project Gotham Racing 4. Yeah, Bizarre Creations. They're no longer a studio. Did they change to Playground? Just kind of researching on the fly here. No, maybe they didn't. I'll look at that later another time. But I'm sure I'd read somewhere that, or maybe it was developers who worked at Bizarre and on Project Gotham moved to Playground or something. But there's some weird licensing issues to do with it. Is what I'd read is why they've never come to backwards compatibility. They also have music on them that is licensed, and again, I don't know how easy it is to remove that. Probably quite easy, but yeah. Anyway, so I picked them up. £1 each, which, come on, every single video game out there is worth £1, right? And that was from CEX, who are usually quite extortionate, so I was very happy about that. I also picked up Brink. Now, I mentioned the Gears Tactics retrospective we did on Gears Intel. Brink was another game developed by Splash Damage, who developed Gears Tactics. So it was one of their previous entries they did for the 360. It's not a turn-based. I think it's just like a third-person shooter, squad-based shooter, potentially. I'm going to check that out. So let's have a look quickly. Brink game. Let's see what its Metacritic score is. Yeah, Brink is a first-person shooter. Developed by Splash Damage, published by Bethesda. That's weird that it's not in backwards compatibility then, right? Yeah, the game received mixed reviews, but was commercially successful. Sold over 2.5 million units. Wow. That's a lot of numbers for a game I'd never heard of before. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to trying that out. And I picked that up purely off the back of realizing that Splash Damage had developed it, because I really, really love Gears Tactics. I thought, these guys must be good. They're a UK developer as well. So Splash Damage. They're currently owned by Tencent, but they are a UK developer, which is awesome. What else did I pick up? Bayonetta. Bayonetta is a game I have never played. Apparently there is a superior version of Bayonetta on the Xbox One and Series X that you can buy digitally. It's like a remaster version or ultimate version or something. I've picked up the original 360 version to try out. So yeah, I'm just kind of back in the 360 game, I suppose. 360 physical collection game, because I now have the 360. I was playing it loads. I played Project Gotham for 2 hours last night. I was having a fucking brilliant time. Really, there's something about, like, I'm not like a huge racing game fan. I'm very picky about my racing games, but I think the reason Project Gotham is so fun is you don't have to come first all the time. It's a bit like how Forza works with some of its modes. Project Gotham is famous for this thing called its kudos system, where you gain stars and points by, doing drifts and handbrake turns and drafting behind cars and doing an overtaking. So it's not just about coming first. It has more of an arcade feel to it, which is what I like. Don't get me wrong, I tried Forza Motorsport last year, and that is an insanely, immersive racing game. But just looking for a bit more fun. Things like Ridge Racer and Project Gotham. Project Gotham and Ridge Racer are very close together. The more arcadey nature. Yeah, I was playing that for ages, but I'm looking forward to trying Brink. I also downloaded Alien Rage, which was a game that was doing the rounds on these lists of games that had been discounted. That was I played a solid hour of that. That was, shall we say, a very of its time 360 game. And I don't mean like the graphics and the performance. I mean, like, some of the dialogue coming out of it was, yeah. I might talk more about that in future. I was playing it like this game needs a review. This needs its own retrospective. So yeah, loving the 360 life right now. Back in the good old days of Xbox, when they could do no wrong. Anyway, so what have I been playing? Few things. I'll get to the main one at the end, but Diablo 4 new season came. Diablo. Why do I feel like my brain didn't know how to pronounce that? Diablo, whatever. Diablo season 4. Yeah, I haven't played it since season 2. When the game launched back in July last year, I went hard into it. Absolutely loved it. Not usually into those kind of games and don't necessarily engage with the seasonal content, but I heard that the big season 4 launch was like an overhaul of some of the systems and stuff. So I checked that out. I played for a good hour and a half on Wednesday night, and that was awesome to jump back into that and love the vibe of that game. And just sometimes it's nice, like, to step away from the games that require you to be fully engaged, and you could just go around and beat stuff up and smash stuff and collect some loot, and it's just brainless. They're podcast games, you can listen to a podcast while you're playing them. Really enjoying that. Starfield had a new update. Starfield Sandwich, the podcast, which my buddy Eric I say runs. It's Starfield Sandwich was Eric's idea, and then I've kind of come along for the ride. So I contribute to pretty much every episode. There is an episode about that update dropping possibly this weekend. I recorded a whole segment about my reaction to the update, so please go and check out Starfield Sandwich. But basically, huge graphical updates, some gameplay tweaks, quality of life stuff that everybody's sort of been asking for. So I had a nice evening on Starfield in the week, which was really good. I'm going to be playing more, obviously, when the huge update comes out for that later in the year. But primarily, what am I playing is Jedi Survivor. Now, I think 2 weeks ago, or whenever I did the previous episode, 2 weeks ago, I said that I had just started it, or I was going to start it. So Jedi Survivor came to Game Pass. And that's been taking up the bulk of my gaming time. I think I am... There's 6 chapters. I'm basically at the end of chapter 5, or pretty much at the end of chapter 5, or nearly there. And yeah, I've been loving it. Like, I'm not a massive Star Wars fan. I'm like a peripheral Star Wars fan. I think there's probably more bad Star Wars movies and games than there are good. But it's a huge deal, Star Wars. And it felt like that what I've played of Jedi Survivor feels like better than some of the movies, better than some of the TV shows. Certainly one of the best Star Wars games I've ever played. It's so diverse in its gameplay. It sort of sometimes has elements of Dark Souls, and it's not as hard as Dark Souls, but it has like the rest points and respawning enemies and the way you combat some enemies. It has traversal that's like Titanfall, has dungeons that are like Zelda. It's so diverse in its gameplay, and the story's got me. I've been engaged in the story. I'm a fan of the lead characters. Interested to see where it goes and how it all wraps up. The production design and the production value is about as Star Wars as you could possibly get. Like, even somebody like me who's not a hardcore fan, I'm recognizing all the sounds and the feels and the tone of Star Wars, and it's all the flavor is there, and that's been really, really cool to experience. The intro to the game was a bit dull, but once it opened up, it's really, really come into its own, and I kind of keep being impressed by it the more I play. It's made by Respawn, who obviously made Titanfall, and a hugely talented team. I've never played Fallen Order, which is the first one, right? So I don't know how similar it is, but production design and stuff is amazing. Like, cinematically, it's one of the most cinematic games you'll play. Like, the cutscenes are like watching a movie. But then even get some gameplay set pieces are kind of the way it works, and the way the camera moves are very cinematic. The vistas, the environments, the biomes. Yeah, this is a game that when it came out, I remember everybody raving about and saying this is so good, it's incredible, it's amazing, and I was like, Star Wars, whatever. I'll play it. Maybe I'll play it when it goes on sale. And then also, I know it had a shit ton of bugs and performance issues when it launched, which I think dampened the experience. I believe most of that has been fixed, but what I will say is I've definitely had a few bugs in this game. Nothing that has ruined the experience, but there's been some stuff that's made me kind of laugh and say, oh, maybe this is what people were talking about, at least to a certain level. There's a fair bit of pop-in sometimes in the cutscenes. It's an incredibly well-made game that I think aims higher than it can achieve, which means here and there's a couple of rough around the edges moments, but I don't want to act like they have really had any bearing on my experience, because they haven't. Like I said before, I play Bethesda games and they're known to be buggy as fuck, and it just doesn't bother me. So yeah, but I did notice for a game that is so well put together and cinematic, there's some sketchy bits, but it's awesome. Like, I'm looking forward to finishing it, and I mentioned I was playing Diablo 4 and Starfield. Like, I was annoyed at taking myself away from Jedi Survivor, but I was like, I want to check out the updates to those other games, and I'll go back to Jedi Survivor, and I'm determined to finish. Hopefully I can finish it over the next couple of days, and then move on. Because yeah, Jedi Survivor. Would I have played it if it had come to Game Pass? To circle back round here. I don't know. Probably not. Maybe not. Maybe if I'd got it super on sale in years down the line. I didn't buy it because I'm not a Star Wars fan. I mean, I'd heard it was a great game, but yeah. But when it's put on a plate in front of me on Game Pass, yeah, I've lapped it up straight away, and I'm glad I have. Yeah, I think I imagine if you're a Star Wars fan, you will absolutely love it because there's so much lore in there as well. There's stuff to read. There's a shitload of extra stuff to do, side quests. I've done little bits here and there, but I'm generally just focusing on the main story and yeah, having a blast with that. That's kind of it, I think. Yeah, there was a lot of ways I could have gone with today's episode, and there's more I kind of want to say on some of the things I've talked about today, but they're very meaty topics, and I don't know. It's the sort of thing I want to speak to other people about as well. So, but yeah, things are on the up and up. It's not all bad out there. Things will rise from the ashes. These people that have lost their jobs, startups always happen. Another thing I've mentioned on this show. Solo developed games are so common these days. Indies and AA's are like the saviors of the industry right now. We don't, AAA, it's a funny old business, but talented people will find their place, and I really hope we see more games from those people. So there's, it's very easy to be all doom and gloom, but there's worse things going on, There's like waterborne diseases spreading around the UK right now. People are being told to boil their water like we're in a third world country. What's that about? Yeah. There's a lot of shitty problems out there. Gaming's gaming. Console warring is dumb. People online are being dumb about it. Yes, this is the negative side of business, but stuff will rise up. People will start new studios and people will find their place. And I hope they do. Yeah, God, I rambled on a bit of a tangent there. Sorry about that. But yes, what's coming up? So I want to finish Jedi Survivor. I kept talking about things like Cyberpunk and stuff that I was going to start. I haven't started them. These are 100-hour investments that I'm just haven't found the time or guts to start yet. But Crow Country is out, that new PS1 style survival horror game. As soon as I finish Jedi Survivor, I'm going straight into that. I see lots of people playing it. I'm so desperate to start it and play it. It's like 15 quid to buy, right? I can't start it. I have to finish Jedi Survivor first. But Crow Country, yeah, looking forward to starting that. I cannot wait. Looks right up my street. Right up my survival horror alley. Yeah, and with the sort of retro look to it as well. That's it, I suppose. Yeah, I said it was going to be positive. It was a bit of a dreary start, but hopefully we got positive by the end. Thank you, as always, for listening. This has been the Gaming Aroma podcast. Please rate me on Spotify. Give me a review on Apple Podcasts. Apparently that really helps. Podcast numbers are slowly creeping up, which is nice to see. A few of you, I think I've got a few loyal listeners out there who keep coming back. But yeah, my Leakers episode, the leak episode I did last week, I think that was my best performing episode. It, yeah, did like maybe double the numbers of anything I've ever done. So that was cool. Because, I do this for me, but it'd be nice if people listen to it. And as I keep saying, I want to talk to people. I'm going to start reaching out more to others. There's a few people I've got my eye on that I'm going to see if they want to come and have a chat with me. There's others, my co-hosts on other shows are always telling me that they're going to come on. And I've had people say they're going to come on. I just haven't proposed dates to them yet. So, but there's some other outsiders that I want to speak to. But if you are listening to this and you want to talk about anything to do with games, and you're sort of in the industry or a content creator or something, or you've got something you just really passionate about that you want to get off your chest, have a good old whinge, which is fun to do sometimes. Yeah, give me a shout. I try not to make it a whingy podcast, but that does keep happening. It's completely unintentional. I feel like I'm trying my best to always frame it as a push for positivity, but we like to have a whinge now and again. Yep, that's it. Until next time, thanks as always for listening. This has been a Gaming Row podcast. Until next time, bye.